Good morning, Virgo. It's Anna from Virgo. You already know it's over, and the silence you're choosing speaks louder than any explanation could. Listen, because walking away clean requires understanding what silence actually does. Goodbyes come in versions. There's the version with closure, with conversations, with explanations and apologies and attempts to leave things better than you found them. There's messy version with arguments, with blame, with burning bridges deliberately because anger needs outlet and their face is convenient target. And then there's silence, the version where you just stop responding, stop showing up, stop being available in ways you were available before, and you don't explain why, don't provide reasoning, don't give them tools to understand what happened or what they did or whether this is fixable. You're choosing silence. I see it in your energy. I see the decision already made, the door already closing, the part of you that used to care about their feelings finally depleted to point where protecting yourself matters more than managing their reaction to your departure. This isn't cruelty. This is exhaustion. This is someone who's tried other ways, who's communicated needs that weren't met, who's set boundaries that weren't respected, who's given chances that were wasted. And now you're done trying, done explaining, done hoping they'll finally understand if you just find the right words. There are no right words. You've learned this. You've tested this. So silence it is. And yes, this will hurt them. The title isn't lying. You are about to hurt this person, possibly devastate them, through choosing to disappear rather than dismount with grace, through leaving them with questions that won't get answered, with confusion about what they did wrong, with the particular torture of being left without closure, without final conversation that at least gives them something to work with, some understanding of why person they cared about decided they weren't worth explanation, weren't worth goodbye that included actual goodbye instead of just absence, that gradually makes it clear you're not coming back. But here's what needs to be said clearly. Their hurt isn't your responsibility to prevent. Not anymore. Not after whatever led to this point. Not when staying to soften your leaving means prolonging your own suffering, means prioritizing their comfort over your escape, means letting their potential pain trap you in situation that's been hurting you consistently, systematically, in ways they either didn't notice or didn't care enough to change. Walking away in silence is self-preservation, not punishment. Understanding that distinction matters. Knowing why you're choosing this method matters. Because if you're doing it to hurt them, to get revenge, to make them feel abandoned as payback for how they made you feel, the silence becomes weapon and you become person wielding pain deliberately. And that changes you in ways that serving justice or extracting revenge never justifies. That damages you more than it damages them, because becoming cruel to punish cruelty makes you the thing you hated is less than Heshon. Zero hash is greater than, but if you're doing it because explaining feels impossible, because engaging one more time feels unbearable, because you've already said everything that needs saying and they didn't hear it then, so they won't hear it now, because staying to provide closure means giving them opportunity to convince you to stay or to hurt you one more time before you go, then silence is protection, is wisdom, is you finally choosing yourself after choosing them, choosing to preserve relationship, choosing to make it work for too long while it was clearly not working. Let me show you what walking away in silence actually looks like and what it leaves behind. First, there's the confusion they'll experience. They'll notice the shift, the absence, the unanswered messages, the unreturned calls, the sudden unavailability where availability used to be consistent. And they'll wonder, they'll question, they'll probably think it's temporary, that you're busy, that you're upset about something specific, and you'll reach out once you've calmed down, because that's been the pattern before. That's how your conflicts resolved before, with temporary distance followed by reconnection. But the distance doesn't end this time. Days pass, weeks pass, still silence. And confusion deepens into panic, into desperation, into them reaching out multiple ways, trying to get response, trying to understand what happened, trying to fix whatever they think is broken, when actually what's broken is your willingness to keep trying to make this work. And that's not something they can fix through grand gesture or through apology or through promise to change, because you've stopped believing in their capacity to be different than they've proven themselves to be. The confusion hurts them because humans need understanding, need narrative, need story that explains why things happen the way they happened. Your silence denies them that, denies them closure, denies them the satisfaction of knowing. Even if knowing confirms they fucked up, at least knowing gives them something solid to work with instead of this uncertainty that lets them imagine scenarios, fill in blanks with guesses that might be worse than reality or might be kinder than reality, but either way aren't reality. Second, there's the self-examination your silence forces. When you leave with explanation, you give them focus for their processing. They left because of X. They said I did Y and it hurt them. They told me Z was deal breaker and I crossed it. Clear cause and effect, clear understanding of what went wrong, even if they disagree with your assessment, even if they think you're being unfair or oversensitive or wrong about what happened. But silence removes the clarity, forces them to examine everything. Every interaction, every conversation, every moment that might have been the moment that made you decide they weren't worth staying for. And this examination is painful because it's uncertain, because they don't know what they're looking for, because maybe the reason you left isn't something they did recently, but something cumulative, pattern they didn't see while living it, but that becomes obvious in retrospect once you're gone and they're forced to review the relationship honestly instead of through the distorted lens of denial that let them believe everything was fine is less than has hone. Zero hash is greater than. This forced self-examination is sometimes the most valuable thing your silence gives them. Sometimes it's what finally makes them see their patterns, their contributions to relationship failures, their behaviors that push people away. Sometimes your silence teaches them what your words never could, because words let them argue, let them defend, let them explain away their actions as misunderstood or justified or not as bad as you're making them sound. Silence doesn't argue back. Silence just is. And sometimes silence's refusal to engage is exactly what breaks through denial. That conversation never penetrated. Third, there's the rejection they'll feel. Being left hurts. Being left without explanation amplifies the hurt because it adds element of, I'm not even worth explaining to, not even worth the effort of goodbye, not even important enough for them to spend time telling me why they're done. And yes, that's going to wound them. That's going to hit their self-worth, their sense of value, their belief that they matter to people they care about. The wound might be sharp, immediate devastation, might be slow burn of realization that someone they loved or wanted or valued decided they weren't worth basic courtesy of explained departure. Either way, it hurts in ways that explained goodbye, however painful, doesn't hurt, because explained goodbye at least contains respect, contains acknowledgement that person being left matters enough to receive honesty about why leaving is happening. Your silence communicates you don't matter enough for explanation. Whether you intend that message or not, whether it's accurate or not, that's what silence reads as. That's what they'll hear. That's the wound that forms. And that wound might fester, might create bitterness, might make them someone who hurts next person, because you hurt them and hurt people unless they do the work to heal instead of passing damage forward. This reflection invites you to consider, knowing that silence will hurt them this way, are you still choosing it? And if yes, why is silence necessary despite the harm it causes? Now let me address when silence is appropriate versus when it's avoidance disguised as protection. Silence is appropriate when engaging is dangerous. When this person has shown themselves to be manipulative, to be someone who uses your explanations against you, to be someone who escalates when you try to leave, who threatens or guilts or leverages your compassion to keep you trapped. In these situations, silence isn't cruelty, it's safety. It's recognizing that clean break, however cold it seems, is safer than gradual departure that gives them opportunities to sabotage your leaving, to make leaving harder than it already is. Silence is appropriate when you've already communicated extensively and they haven't listened. When you've set boundaries they've ignored. When you've expressed needs they've dismissed. When you've explained problems repeatedly and they've minimized or defended or promised change that never materialized, at certain point, continuing to explain becomes performative, is less than hashon. Zero hash is greater than. Becomes you going through motions of communication that isn't actually communicating anything new. And silence is acknowledgement that words haven't worked, won't work, and you're done wasting energy on trying to make someone understand who's proven through their actions they don't want to understand. Silence is appropriate when explaining requires emotional labor. You no longer have capacity to perform. When you're depleted, when engaging one more time, even just to say goodbye properly, feels like it would break something in you that's already fragile. When self-preservation requires choosing your energy over their closure, and that's valid, that's allowed, that's you finally prioritizing yourself after months or years of prioritizing them, of managing their emotions, of making yourself smaller or quieter or more accommodating to keep peace that was never actually peaceful, just absence of open conflict. But silence is not appropriate when it's just easier than having hard conversation. When you're avoiding discomfort of their reaction, when you're choosing silence because conflict makes you anxious and disappearing is simpler than saying, this isn't working for me and I'm choosing to leave. when you're using silence as weapon rather than as shield, when the goal is punishing them for disappointing you rather than protecting yourself from further harm. If you're choosing silence as avoidance rather than as protection, reconsider. Find the courage for the hard conversation, not for them, for you. So you don't carry guilt of knowing you took the easy way, knowing you hurt someone unnecessarily, because facing their pain felt harder than causing it from distance where you don't have to witness impact is less than hason. Zero hash is greater than. This reflection invites you to consider, is your silence protective necessity or is it conflict avoidance? And how do you know the difference? Let me give you practical guidance for walking away in silence if silence is truly the path you need to take. First, commit fully. Don't half leave. Don't keep door cracked. Don't respond just this once when they reach out desperately. Silence that breaks isn't actually silence. It's intermittent reinforcement that makes them cling harder, that teaches them persistence, eventually breaks through your boundaries. That your no doesn't mean no if they just try hard enough. If you're going silent, go completely silent. Block if necessary. Remove them from your digital spaces if seeing their attempts to contact you weakens your resolve. Tell mutual friends you're not available for updates about this person, that you need separation to be complete, that helping them reach you isn't helping you, and you need them to respect that even if they don't understand it. Second, prepare for their escalation. People who get left via silence often escalate their attempts to regain contact. They show up at your places. They enlist others to intervene. They create emergencies or crises designed to force you to break silence, because ignoring regular attempts is one thing, but ignoring emergency feels cruel. Stay strong. Most emergencies aren't actually emergencies. They're manipulations. And even if genuine emergency happens, they have other people to support them. They don't need you specifically. And breaking silence to help during crisis just teaches them that creating crisis is a way to access you when normal methods fail. Third, sit with the guilt, because you will feel guilty. You will question whether you're doing the right thing. You will imagine their pain and wonder if you're a monster for causing it. These feelings are normal. They're a sign of your humanity, of your capacity for empathy, of your inherent resistance to causing harm. But guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. Guilt just means you're doing something difficult that has cost. Sit with it. Process it. Talk to therapists or trusted friends who understand your reasons. Don't let guilt pull you back into a situation you left for good reason. Let guilt coexist with conviction that even leaving this way, is right choice for you. Fourth, know that you don't owe them forever. Silence now doesn't mean silence eternally. If time passes and you reach a place where you have capacity to explain, where explaining serves your healing rather than detracting from it, you can always break silence later. You can send message months from now that says, I know I left without explaining. I needed to protect myself then. Now I have space to tell you that, if that's what you need. But don't promise yourself you'll do this later. Don't use I'll explain eventually to justify silence now. Leave open possibility, but don't obligate yourself. You might never feel ready or willing or interested in providing explanation, and that's allowed too. That's your right. That's you choosing to let the silence stand as your final statement about what this relationship was and why it ended. This reflection invites you to consider what support do you need to maintain your silence, and who can provide that support without judging your choice is less than #0. 5 is greater than. Finally, let me speak to what you're protecting by choosing silence. You're protecting your peace, your energy, your capacity to heal without their interference. Your right to end things on your terms rather than on theirs, or on terms negotiated through conversations where they have power to persuade, to guilt, to manipulate you into staying longer than serves you. You're protecting yourself from being talked out of decision you've made, from having your clarity muddied by their promises or their pain or their version of events that conflicts with your lived experience. You're protecting your future from being contaminated by past that won't let go gracefully, that will cling and demand and extract if given any opening to do so. This protection matters. This protection is worth the cost, including the cost of their hurt, including the cost of your guilt, including the cost of knowing that you're choosing yourself in ways that damage them. Because staying would damage you more, explaining would damage you more, engaging one more time would damage you more. And you've been damaged enough by them, by situation, by your own tendency to sacrifice yourself for others' comfort. You're done being damaged, done explaining, done managing their emotions at expense of your well-being. You're walking away in silence without looking back. And yes, they'll hurt. And yes, that hurts you to know. But you're doing it anyway. Because sometimes hurting someone is unavoidable consequence of saving yourself. Sometimes goodbye without explanation is kindest thing you can give yourself, even if it's hardest thing you give them. Sometimes silence speaks truth that words could never capture. Walk in your silence. Hold your boundary. Trust that leaving, even leaving this way, is right choice for you. Whatever they feel about it is theirs to carry. What you feel about it is yours to process. But neither of those feelings changes the fact that you're done. And done means done. And silence is how you're expressing that finality. So express it fully, completely, and then keep walking.